On March 4th, Donald Trump addressed a joint session of Congress outlining his legislative agenda and national priorities. And during this speech, we saw Al Green, a Democrat from Texas, kicked out for stating that Trump did not, in fact, receive a mandate from the people to cut Medicaid.
What a spectacle. A U.S. congressman waving his cane at the president on the House floor.
Mr. Green, take your seat.
Texas Democrat Al Green berated the president while Republicans drowned him out. When he refused to sit, he was thrown out.
Remove this gentleman from the chamber.
It was just one of the extraordinary moments from last night's presidential address.
Green, who has served in Congress since 2005, has been vocal about his criticisms of Trump, having introduced articles of impeachment against him in his first and his second term. Green wasn't the only member of Congress to disapprove of Trump's antics. Jasmine Crockett took a more proactive approach, walking out of the speech and later stating,
"This is a terrible nightmare. Somebody slap me and wake me the up, because I'm ready to get on with it. I don't know why we fighting with Greenland. Why we fighting with Greenland? We fighting with Canada. We fighting with Mexico. Yet we in love with Putin. What is happening? Like, this is not America."
Now, this type of fighting right here doesn't really do much for me, being that this is the most pushback that we've seen from the Democrats since he took office. Crockett has been a fighter who doesn't take shit from the right.
You know what we're here for? You know we're here about AG.
I don't think you know what you're here for.
Well, you the one talking about.
I think your fake eyelashes are messing up.
No, ain't nothing.
Hold on.
Listen.
Order.
I'm just curious, just to better understand your ruling. If someone on this committee then starts talking about somebody's bleach blonde, bad built butch body, that would not be engaging in personalities, correct?
A what now?
And she's been super critical of Doge.
So the Republicans have controlled this committee. So my question is, why is it that you need to create an entirely new subcommittee when you literally could go through and do whatever work it is that you're talking about handing over to the gentle lady who has never seemingly brought up anything about efficiency? The only thing I recall from the 118th was her spending a lot of time on somebody's junk in this committee. So let me be clear. Y'all had a chance. You chose not to use it. So why should the American people be convinced that now all of a sudden, because you create a new committee that has been promulgated by a real oligarch, you're talking about Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi, they were actually duly elected, not somebody sitting there buying Twitter and just happened to be the richest person in the world telling y'all what to do. Let me tell you something. Y'all need to find some people that actually care about their constituents. And honestly, whenever y'all are ready to work, we on this side of the aisle have always been ready to do what is right by the American people. Instead, what you can continue to do is go after the most vulnerable in our country.
And she calls out the bullshit coming from the Republican misinformation and propaganda.
You know, what is wild to me is that this word patriot seems to be getting co-opted for propagandists, because that's what they do. All right. So we're going to talk about what my colleague from Georgia, she talked about misinformation, and I don't know what she was talking about. But nevertheless, we can look at her own tweets and we can find plenty of misinformation. But we're just going to go through one specific tweet. Now, she said that we need to work with Israel to track down the serial numbers on any U.S. weapons used by Hamas against Israel. Dr. Snyder, I may be going out on a limb, but are you aware that that was actually just propaganda that was put out and there actually were not U.S. weapons that were being used by Hamas as she attempted to insinuate in this tweet?
Yes, I mean, obviously there what you have is a typical example of American-Russian messaging where the implicit idea is supposed to be we shouldn't give weapons to Ukraine because they're going to end up going somewhere else. There's no evidence for that. It's hard to think of an example where American weapons have been leveraged with such success as on the Ukrainian battlefield.
Thank you so much. In fact, for some people, especially people that serve on the committee, they may be surprised to know that it's actually a former Russian president and Putin's sidekick, Dmitry, and I don't want to slaughter his name, so I'm going to say Dmitry M., who actually she quote tweeted. See, the problem that we're having, and the reason that we're bringing up Russia as well, is because Russia is a threat as well as China. So we are not going to sit here and pretend as if it's only one or the other. But the biggest problem that we have is we have people that sit in this chamber and they spread the misinformation. If it was left in Russia or China, whatever. But the problem is that you have people that sit in positions of power and they have a $2 million budget. You think that they would call on some staff to find out if they were telling the truth about the things that they're putting on social media, but instead it works for their rhetoric. And as we talk about rhetoric, something else that was appalling to me was this insinuation that when you look at the Ukrainians, which is why we're having problems getting the funding that Ukraine needs, is because people in this chamber push misinformation and disinformation. They want to talk about the Ukrainians got all of these Nazis. Well, let me tell you something. You can find Nazis anywhere. You can find them right here in the United States. In fact, a bunch of the people that they're calling victims and prisoners of war, also known as convicted felons from January 6th, I have an article that I'd like to enter into the record by unanimous consent that says neo-Nazi January 6th rioter pleads guilty.
Without objection.
Thank you so much. So here's the point. We have people in this chamber that are actually causing just as much a threat, if not more of a threat, to our own country. We should be talking about holding our very own accountable for the misinformation and disinformation that they are spreading, whether it's coming out of China, whether it's coming out of Russia, or whoever is peddling it. It is a problem because right now what we see is that people are dying and we cannot get the support that we need from the public because they continue to peddle lies. And I'm tired of it because I didn't come to this chamber to play games. I came to this chamber to answer to the people, the American people, and to make sure that we keep the American people safe. And if we don't get something done, as they talk about the border, I do want to be clear, the only reason we haven't gotten funding for the border is because they killed, the House Republicans here, killed the bill that they actually sent us from the Senate side. If they want to do some work, let me tell you something. The Democrats are ready, and it seems like the Senate Republicans are ready too. They just need to get to it and stop peddling Putin's lies. Thank you, and I yield.
Which is a series of good points. Crockett seems to be a good candidate to lead what is left of the left, because this feels like paid opposition. Nothing but status quo holders and protectors that won't make anything worse, yet won't make anything better. If you want funding, you have to take political action committee contributions. And that money comes from corporations. If you're taking corporations' money, you probably won't be advocating for taxing them and regulating them. Yes, during her 2022 campaign, Jasmine Crockett received significant financial support through super PACs aligned with the cryptocurrency industry. Now, I appreciate her advocacy in legislative efforts. I really do. But acceptance of PAC money always will influence policy positions. AOC didn't get to become top Democrat on the House Oversight and Accountability Committee, and she doesn't take PAC money. She's an outsider. She's one of us. Same with Bernie Sanders in 2016. So I'm inclined to keep Crockett at arm's distance until she denies PAC funding, because it is us against corporations. Do not take their money. I control you, and I control elites. Good night.